In our lives, there are events, and in the lives of an average person, there's events that they celebrate, they remember. Birthdays comes to mind immediately. But what are some of the other hallmarks? What are some of the other things in our lives that we remember, celebrate, and that's better. And put expectations on our progeny, our children, things that as parents we'd like to see, things that as grandparents, in some places, high school graduation is a big deal. In other places, it's taken for granted, like Taiwan, and they turn to university graduation, which is almost universally expected. And then, most likely it would be a job. Maybe somewhere in between, maybe at university, if you're lucky, you found a life partner. And sometime after you're working, decide to get married. And then the next step would be a house. And then children. This is kind of an idea, a cultural norm, a cultural idea. But it seems like after the children, what's to measure your life? I call them hallmarks. Like the Hallmark greeting cards in the US. But it seems to me that most people, after the children are born and begin their education, our celebrations, our hallmarks become vicarious, becomes the other. So we celebrate the same things with our children: graduation, marriage, and children. And then we fulfill our expectations as grandparents. But on a personal note, on a personal measurement, I looked at my worthy, as I call them, worthy hallmarks. The things worthy of me taking a look at, slightly different than others around me. I did go to university. I got an assortment of different jobs, but never really found a career until I started teaching a lecture level at universities. But I did have other kinds of hallmarks. And I noticed that numbers that end in 9, that end the decades. I can't remember being 9 years old and celebrating what I had accomplished in my first 9 years. But at 19 was a worthy hallmark. And what makes it worthy was the Vietnam draft was staring me in the face. 19-year-old man, I had to face the reality that it was possible, it was in the realm of possibilities that I would be drafted into the army and go fight in a war, maybe even kill people that I had no grudge against. Vietnam had never done anything to me, and never done anything to my country as far as I could see. It was a war without reason, like many of them are. But this was the hallmark. Now, I certainly wouldn't send out greeting cards to a young man facing the draft. And the next end of a decade, it was the hallmark, was 29. Well, I'd already become a father at 27. But at 29, I was already facing the reality of a marriage that looked well on its way to failure. So here we are, 19, the draft, 29 with a young child, facing the reality that my marriage was on the rocks. Yeah. So, are those hallmarks that I want to celebrate? Perhaps not, but I do recognize that they help make me who I am, help make me the man I am today. How I dealt with what seemed like tragic events in my first 30 years. Then at 39, I had already spent 2 years, almost a year and a half, better part of 2 years in Japan, in a Renzai Zen temple, training to become a monk. My spiritual life was well engaged because even though I'd left the dojo, I cherish many of the lessons that I learned and found myself at 39 deeply committed to my spiritual destiny, my spiritual path. I'd been on it since, or even before, early teens, but now I was more committed and more diligent. Not much fun, however, very serious 39-year-old. So I was looking at the next decade. 49, things were beginning to turn for me. 49, I celebrated a hallmark, a worthy hallmark, of coming and living in Taiwan. I remember years and years ago, 1981, 1982, somewhere in that time period, I had made a trip to continental U.S. from Hawaii, visiting with friends there. And friends encouraged me to go see their teacher. I spoke of him before, Muktananda, better known as Baba, affectionately known as Baba. Well, I went to his ashram in Santa Monica, and unfortunately for me, he had just passed away the week prior to my first visit. But I got to participate in large group meditation. I received Shaktipat in intensive. Shaktipat is supposed to be the opening of the crown. The monk or his designate touches you with a ostrich feather, symbolically opening 2-day, at least 2-day, 4-day intensive, lots of meditation. And while I was around that group, I never joined much. This was previous to going to my studies in Japan, my Zen monk studies. And while I was there, I had an opportunity to have a session with Baba's astrologer, Chakrapani. And I remember him, it was quite a hallmark, a worthy hallmark. And I remember him saying that, first of all, he really laughed at me. He says, you seem like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. It was just an observation. The gravity, I guess he could feel my seriousness, and that's how he put it, carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. And then he laughed, like this is the most ridiculous concept, that I could be carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. And I remember being a little bit put off, thinking, well, I'm sure this is a valid pursuit on my part to feel the heaviness of the world as I found it. But what I took away from this is he said that for you, life begins in your 60s. And I was about 33, somewhere I would say about 33, 32. And I thought, wow, 60s is a long ways away. What about in between that? And he just says, oh, don't worry, you'll be okay. And now, at a stage where I'm looking back on my 60s, I can see that indeed my worthy hallmarks were in the 60s. So I brought us up to 49, coming to Taiwan. Been experiencing where Hawaii had not been nurturing to me for maybe the previous 20 years. I should have known, I should have made the move sooner, because Hawaii at that stage of my life was not the place I needed to be, and Hawaii was speaking to me that this was so by making life extra difficult, making it hard to support myself It just didn't provide for me. And Hawaii is a tough place to live, trust me. It's a tough place to leave, not live. It's an easy place, wonderful place to live. The best place in the world in many aspects. Weather, people. But I refused to look at the signposts. I refused to accept that I need to leave until it was just at a completely dead end. 49. Well into my life. When I got to Taiwan, it provided for me from the day I first stepped on her soil. It was a place. It was supposed to be a place I needed to be. The next decade was a hard work, teaching, busy life, but times of enjoyment too. But mostly it was a work. '59, I had a heart attack. Put me in the hospital for 3 weeks. Pretty serious. A week in intensive care. But even then, I found the best. I decided to be a good patient. My doctor would come in the room and there would be 5 to 10 nurses at any given time in my room. They seemed to, it was a meeting place, and ostensibly was an opportunity to practice English with me. And they were all anxious to practice. But the primary reason that they would come around, they told me, was that my attitude was laughing and smiling and happy. Even though I was suffering from heart disease. The life of a nurse in the hospital is pretty glum. There's not many bright spots. Hospital patients are notoriously hard to get along with. Can't blame them in many ways, but I thought that, or I just experienced heart attack, but it led to smart attack, I call it. Smart attack, when I started looking at accepting life as it came, thinking of others, trying to make their day pleasant, trying to be someone who people could enjoy being around, someone who could perhaps for a moment help them put their burdens down, have a laugh. I have a lot of entertainment. I have a hairy chest, and the little sensors that they have to put all over your chest, they oil them up and stick them on, grease them up, Vaseline, I don't know what, and put several sensors so that they can keep you monitored. Because it's not uncommon after a heart attack to have more. Just like earthquakes, aftershocks. Well, they wouldn't stick. Everybody would come and try different techniques to get them to stick. And it seemed that we should, I suggested just shave the hair off. Just shave my chest. And I remember 2 or 3 nurses just laughing and shaving my chest, and then the sensors stuck. But my motivation was to make things simpler for the nurses and those around me. And again, took a heart attack to have a smart attack. Yeah. Better to be attacked by smart. And smart, for me, was learning to live a low-impact life. That if I made any impact on others, that it would only be in a positive way, eliminating negative impacts on those around me. So, 59, it might look like I'm going back to 19 and 29, that the hallmarks that I celebrate might not be worthy, but it was life and life's lessons, and it was what made them worthy hallmarks was my increasing willingness to accept, not only to accept, but make the best of what life and its challenges were giving me. The next, and I have to laugh because I understand that Chinese think that a number, age ending in 9 is bad luck. And when you turn 69, you immediately become 70 because you don't want to have the bad luck that goes with being 69. Well, I'm just a few days into 70s. I just started my 70s 1 week ago today. And 69 were my hallmarks. They would have just skipped my hallmarks. My hallmarks were all at the end of a decade. Because I think that it was a good demarcation, a good place to review the previous 10 years. Well, in my 60s, I found and married my second wife. I found and accepted a teacher. First real in the flesh teacher that I'd ever had, who both I accepted and was accepted by him. I also had, in my 60s, I had aortic valve replacement, open heart surgery, 1 bypass, a stent. Of course, that was the predecessor to heart surgery. But again, heart surgery was a worthy hallmark for me. Previous to my surgery, I had decided that I was okay with not having the surgery. If my life was to end, if that was to be, that I was perfectly okay. And as evidence of that, I had a smaller heart attack one early morning, living in Geelong, one cold early morning, 4 a.m. Very common time, I'm told, for heart attacks. And by then I'm really aware of the symptoms. And I felt all the symptoms. And what they teach you is, what they recommend is, when you're feeling this way, get up, monitor your blood pressure, make a decision whether you need to go to the hospital or not. Well, I went through the process in my mind, still laying on my bed, and I decided that if this was my time, I was okay. I went back to sleep. At peace, at ease, no fear of death, feeling that, no regrets, feeling that my life had been full and rich, and that I could go to rest at ease. I remember sharing these feelings with some people close around me, and they got pretty alarmed, even though they didn't tell me anything. They just sort of listened in the way that they do. They talked to some people who talked to my teacher, who requested that I come see him. The teacher requested that I come and talk to him. And when I got there, I shared. I was still beaming. I was still, I think this is the first time I really thought about death and came to peace with that experience that we'll all have. And I shared with him, not knowing exactly what to expect from him, what kind of reaction. Well, he insisted. He says, "You got work to do. Get the surgery." So, respecting him, realizing that he may know more than I do, that I get the surgery. So again, a hallmark, a change. Maybe life cannot be dismissed so easily, going peacefully. Maybe you have to make effort, because it's a gift to be in this body, and maybe you can benefit others by staying in the body, utilizing the wisdom that you've accumulated over a lifetime and sharing that. So, looking at the 60s, life really did happen in the 60s. Chakrapani, so many years ago, was correct. At 69, time for another benchmark, another hallmark, another recognition of what that year had brought to me. So, the 59, 39, 49, 19, 29, these are all apt times to review the decade behind us. Well, when I look at my 69s, when I look at the 69th year, maybe one of the biggest accomplishments I made was paving the way for my brother to move to Taiwan. Helped him find a house. Helped him through my relationships to meet people that could help him in this not easy process of immigrating to Taiwan with his wife, his business. But I'd be remiss, and that's a great thing, and I'd be so happy to have my brother here. But maybe what I began in January, which was Zen with a Smile, this broadcast, this YouTube sharing. Maybe when I'm 79, I'll look back and see that this was again a worthy hallmark. So I've dragged you through maybe a long story. Maybe it seems a little bit convoluted. But as always, it's to make a point. Maybe there's more ways to hallmark your life, especially when you don't fit in exactly to the traditional mold. I never have been the different one among the many. And that certainly hasn't changed and is not about to, not likely that it will change. So, I find my worthy moments, my hallmarks, useful as reminders, as measurements, as progression on the only thing that has ever mattered to me, my spiritual inquiry, my spiritual pursuit, my accumulation of wisdom. So, last week Sunday when I hit 70, I really had a fun day. I celebrated everything that I did that day as a first in my new decade. So I'm really looking forward to 79 and everything that becomes in between, to have another opportunity